Welcome to the Fire Bay, the podcast where we dive into the heart of the fire service, community engagement, and the stories that keep our world safe. Join Colton every week as he brings you behind the scenes, discuss the issues that matter most to firefighters, share personal stories, and explore ways we can all make a difference in our communities. Whether you're a firefighter, supporter, or just someone who cares about public safety, you're in the right place. This is the Fire Bay.
Welcome back to the Fire Bay podcast, where we talk about all things fire service, leadership, and everything in between. I'm your host, Colton Young, and today's episode is one that we're just going to catch up with each other. We talked about in a few podcasts ago, and it's been a while, and I apologize for it being such a delayed airing for new podcasts. And I'm hoping to get that back going pretty soon, but I have been in the middle of my own crisis. We'll talk about later, but we're going to talk about some stuff that's happening just around us. So one of the things happened right here in Tennessee since we talked a few episodes ago. We talked about some recruit firefighters out of Clarksville, Tennessee, who had been terminated by their fire chief for showing up to an IAFF, that's an International Association of Firefighters rally held by their local, who was advocating for pay. Tennessee is a non-collective bargaining state. However, you do have the federal laws that protect, being able to organize and speak on matter of public concern, and staffing and pay and all that is matter of public concern. So where are we at with all that? Well, there's a lawsuit been filed. It's been filed on behalf of 5 members of the Clarksville firefighters along with their union. It's been filed under federal lawsuit against the city and the fire chief. The campaign started in 2025, focusing on low pay, staffing shortages, working conditions, and overall just firefighter fatigue. Firefighters were speaking at city council meetings, organizing publicly, and running petitions and rallies. They weren't fighting anybody. They weren't out there in pitchforks and torches burning down anything. They were just getting the community involved. But those 5 firefighters, who happened to be probationary, were terminated. No disciplinary on their records, nothing. But because they went against the grain and they were vulnerable, chief decided, hey, we don't need y'all. See you bye. Well, there are reasons in federal laws that protect union members and firefighters, government employees, for being able to speak out on matters such as those. So the IFFs picked up the lawsuit, and it was filed last week. And the lawsuit claims violations of free speech, freedom of association, right to petition government, all protected under the Constitution. It also cites Tennessee law specifically protecting for public employees speaking to elected officials, which that's going to come back later. Just hold on, though. According to the complaint, these firefighters had positive evaluations, no disciplinary history, strong recommendations from officers within their ranks on their employment. At the same time, the lawsuit alleges that the union involvement was discouraged, recruits were warned about joining, and some were even told it could hurt their career. Now, if that's not union busting, I don't know what is. There was even a policy put into place requiring approval before joining outside organizations and restricting groups that could reflect negatively, quote unquote, on the city. You can find all that on WSMV.com under the title Middle Tennessee Firefighters Sue City Over Retaliation. Now, another big issue, to me, that's even maybe a little bit bigger, and it's about the fire service in Tennessee and really almost probably across the country. It starts like ours, where collective bargaining is limited. Firefighters don't have a lot of options. So when they see an issue like low staffing, pay gaps, fatigue, safety concerns, what do? They go to city council, they go to county commission, the public, the media. That's not politics. That's the only lane they have to advocate. If the fire chief is not willing to sit down with them, or the city is not willing to sit down with them, how else are they going to get the story out there? And if a firefighter believes they can be punished for doing that, that creates a big, big problem. And why does this matter to every fire department across the country? Here's the reality. Every firefighter should be paying attention to this, because the outcome of this case could impact how departments handle union activity, what firefighters feel comfortable speaking out about, and how leadership responds to internal concerns. But let's bring it back to the fireground for a second. If firefighters are afraid to speak up about staffing, equipment, training gaps, these pose a problem that don't go away. They just show up on the fireground time and time again, and we do things just enough to be able to satisfy the issue. We never address the issue, because who are we going to talk to about it? Strong organizations don't silence their people, they challenge their people to bring solutions to the problem. To me, I did some research, and consistently we're seeing good leadership have these attributes. They listen, they engage with their employees, they help their employees solve problems as a team, not as a look at me. Weak leadership avoids problems, they deflect them or shoots people down. And the culture plays a huge role on this. If your culture doesn't allow firefighters to speak honestly, you don't have a strong culture. You have a controlled one. At the end of the day, this case is going to be one for the history. It's going to work its way through the courts, and we'll see how it plays out legally. But regardless of the outcome, there's already a lesson here for the fire service. Firefighters will always advocate for their safety, their co-workers, and their communities. The question is, are we building organizations that support that, or ones that fight against that? So going to some other things, we just had St. Patrick's Day. I hope everybody had a safe and enjoyable St. Patrick's Day. And I'll tell you what, it's wild to me, the history of the bagpipes in the fire service. Have you ever stood at attention at a funeral or during a ceremony? Have you heard the sound of bagpipes? You know, it's something that you don't forget. To understand bagpipes in the fire service, you got to go back to the roots of the job itself. Modern firefighting in the United States, especially in cities like New York, Boston, Chicago, was heavily built by Irish and Scottish immigrants in the 1800s. These were tight-knit communities, and they were brought together by their traditions, which include bagpipes. Now, in Irish and Scottish culture, bagpipes were used for military ceremonies, funerals, honoring the fallen. So, when these same individuals became firefighters, they carried that tradition into the firehouse. In the early days of the fire service, funerals were already a major event. When a firefighter died in the line of duty, it wasn't just a loss to a department, it was a loss for the entire community. And that's where the bagpipes became central. The sound of the pipes carried over long distance, cut through the noise of the city, and created a moment of silence and reflection. It became a way to honor sacrifices in a way words could not. Over time, pipe and drum bands started forming within the fire departments, especially in places like FDNY, Chicago, Boston, so forth. So, why does this tradition still hold so much weight today? Well, I think it's because it represents something bigger than just music. It represents a brotherhood. When you hear bagpipes at a firefighter's funeral, you're not just hearing a song, you're hearing respect, honor, tradition, and unity. Songs like Amazing Grace and Going Home have become part of the fire service's identity, and every firefighter knows what that sound means. It means one of our own has made the ultimate sacrifice. Today, bagpipes are still a major part of line of duty funerals, memorial services, promotional ceremonies, IAFF events, and fallen firefighter memorials. Departments across the country, including here in Tennessee, have pipe bands and partner with regional ones. And these aren't just musicians; these are firefighters who take on the responsibility of carrying on tradition. They train, they practice, they show up, and often during the hardest moments of a department that a department will ever face. So, diving a little bit deeper into the meaning. So, here's what I really think matters about this tradition. In a job that is consistently evolving, new equipment, new tactics, new challenges, the pipes remain constant. They remind us where we came from. They connect us back to the generations before us, the sacrifices that built this profession, and the responsibility we carry today. Because at the end of the day, this job is more than just calls and equipment. It's a call. It's a tradition. Like this tradition, it's what we do to keep up the identity alive. So next time you hear pipes, take a second, listen, understand what it represents. Because it's not just a sound, it's the voice of a fire service honoring its own in a long, long tradition. So a little while ago, I was in the middle of doing an interview with a different organization. And in the interview, the chief asked a question, and I thought it was actually very interesting. And the question was, in the fire service, there's this thing called NIOSH. The NIOSH 5 are the 5 common factors identified in line of duty deaths. It was first published back in 1998. And here's what I want to ask the question. Why are we still talking about the same 5 problems nearly 30 years later? Let's lay them out there. The NIOSH 5 are improper risk assessment, lack of incident command, lack of accountability, inadequate communications, lack of or failure to follow SOPs. These aren't complicated concepts. They're not new. They're not even really that hard to understand. But they continue to show up over and over and over again in line of duty. So here's the uncomfortable truth. There is not a knowledge problem. It's not that we don't know these things, it's that we're not consistently executing them. Because if we are, we wouldn't still be losing firefighters to the same exact issues time and time again. So the real question becomes, why isn't this sticking? I had a buddy on here, a few podcasts ago, Jason Eubanks, with, you know, he's doing a great job going around teaching incident command classes and so forth. And his company's called First Alarm Fire Training. So shout out to First Alarm. But he's doing these classes, but the question is, what are we doing? We always say risk a lot to save a lot, risk a little to save a little. But are we actually making those calculated decisions when we're the incident command? Or are we letting emotion drive us? Are we pushing offensive when it should be defensive? Risk assessments have to be continuous, not just a one time decision. They have to be reevaluated moments, hours, seconds. You cannot run a fireground without command, period. And yet we still see it time and time again. no clear command established, command not maintained, or command overwhelmed early. If there's no command, there's no control. Do we know where our people are? Not generally. Specifically, do we know Colton Young is on the Alpha Delta side on the 2nd Division? Do we know that Colton Young is on the RIT team on Bravo Charlie? Because accountability failures don't show up until it's too late. And when they do, it's catastrophic. Inadequate communications. This is one of the biggest ones. And it doesn't matter where you're at, whether you're in FDNY or in Podunk backwoods. Missed radio traffic, unclear assignments, and no updates. Because whether the radio signal's blocked or people talking over each other, maybe you're just not running the right radios. Maybe you're using non-commercial radios for commercial firefighting. If we're not communicating, we're not operating as a team. So when you're sitting at the station and you're drinking that coffee in the mornings and stuff, talk about communication. What happens if you don't lose communication? You know, one of the things about me is I'm a diver, and I've gone through multiple different public safety diver courses, and there's always a little bit of different communications. But one thing that happens in every class is if you're not on comms, how do you communicate? There's backup upon backup. You have rope pulls. You have, you know, we're all taught young in the fire service, smooth bump to the pump. You know, what are ways you can communicate with each other when things go bad? Because it's not if, it's when. This one is culture a little bit. We're going to talk about SOPs because SOPs only work if they are clear, they're trained on, and they're reinforced. If people pick and choose when to follow them, they're not SOPs, they are suggestions. So we say all this to ask, why hasn't this changed? Why are we still here? I think it comes down to a few things. Complacency. We've always done it that way. Is the number one worst thing to hear in a fire service. There's all types of tradition, and we talked about it with the bagpipes and stuff like that. But just because we've done it this way all along doesn't make it the right way. It just is a way. Accidental success. We get away with things way too much. We get away with things until we don't. And when we don't, we look like a fool. Because why didn't this work? It's worked the last time we did it. No fire scene is ever the same. There might be very similar items, but they're never identical. I think one of the big things too, and there's 5 of these and we're on number 3, but one of the big things I think too is ego, not wanting to be told we're wrong. But I want to take that a little bit further too. I think sometimes we get some of these senior firefighters, senior people on the job, whether you're just a firefighter or a chief or whatever, and they're really good at something. They're really, really good. But they don't want to let it go. They don't want to pass on their knowledge because someone might learn to do it better. And then they will feel like they're not needed. That's terrible. Because if something happens and you're no longer able to do something, don't you want to know that someone out there is doing just as good a job, if not better than you, because you helped grow that? We always talk about leaving the fire service better than we found it. So why are we letting the egos and why are we letting these feelings of someone being able to do it better than us stop us? We should be training our replacements. We should be training those coming in the door to be a chief one day. Because if you're not, they might not want that position. But if you're not working with them to advance themselves, how are you advancing the fire? This is one that I really like: the lack of realistic training. The training task, not full incident management. We train task, not full incident management. Why? Because incident management gets looped in with senior staff. Senior staff is not always there. Teacher, your recruit, teacher rookie, teacher firefighter, teacher lieutenant, teacher captain, whatever position you are, make sure the person under you knows incident management. Too many times we're going all over this country as task force, strike teams, whatever, and we're getting into places and people do not know what the incident management team actually does. Know about it. Know how to fill out those papers. The 214s are something that you could do every day on shift and it wouldn't hurt anything because all it is a log and it keeps you accountable on what you've done. One of the big things that we see around here is people not filling out their 214s and they're not able to get reimbursed by either the federal government or local government because they're not putting enough detail in there to say, well, yeah, you did something, but what did you do? On here, it just says you went from point A to point B, and what do you do when you got there? Because if you didn't do anything, we're not going to pay you. So, so train on that incident management. Number 5, weak accountability culture. We don't always hold each other to the standard. Why? Why don't we do that? Maybe it's because we're intimidated by those that we might need to call out because they are the senior people. Because that's how we've always done it. That's BS. We need to hold, no matter what your position is, a senior person should hold a rookie accountable, and a rookie should hold a senior accountable with respect. Now, I'm not telling a rookie firefighter that might be listening to this to go up to your chief and tell them that they're doing everything wrong. There's ways to have conversations, and there's ways when to and when not to have those conversations. Make sure you know those, because if you go into a firehouse and say, Captain, I think you're doing this all wrong. We need to do it this way because I saw it on YouTube and XYZ, or I went to a class or whatever, and they said that you were wrong. That's never going to fly. But if you go to a class and you say, "Hey, Cap, can we go over this drill I learned in a class, and I just want to see what you think about it," and you go through that with your captain or your rookie or whoever, and you might find out that there is a better way to do something. You know, there might be a way to blend the two to have a hybrid way of accomplishing the goal that now makes it safer and more effective. But also, not just about training, how about physical agility? How about mental health? How about cancer presumptions? What are we doing to hold each other accountable on stuff that we might not always think about? You know, the federal government just passed legislation not long ago adding cancers to the federal line of duty bill for firefighters. That's great. What are we doing as a department and as individuals to make sure we're meeting all the criteria, so if we do contract those cancers, that we can get the help and the financial support that we need. No one got in this fire service to get rich. So why, if we're exposing ourselves all the time to cancers, we're fighting PFAS right now in fire gear, we're fighting AFFF, foam, why are we allowing ourselves, and not even just all that stuff, the carcinogens that are in houses nowadays. We're exposing ourselves to all these toxins. Why are we not holding ourselves more accountable on making sure we do our yearly physicals, our monthly checks, whatever? So I say all that to say, how do we change the trend? If we're serious about changing this, here's what needs to take place. Train decision making, not just task. Force officers and firefighters to think, adapt, and lead. Establish command early and strong. First in, set the tone, every time. Engine 1, 2-story residential structure, gable roof, flames on the Alpha Delta side. Engine 1's going to have such and such command. Second due, grab the hydrant, rescue, set up for RIT. Set the tone early. Build a real accountability system. Know your people. Know where they are at all times on the fire ground. Prioritize communication. Clear, simple, consistent. Same thing every time. Last but not least, enforce SOPs without exception. No gray area, no shortcuts. SOPs are a directive. You shall do this. SOGs are you should do this. Shall and should are two very different things. And most importantly, create a culture where doing it right matters more than doing it fast. Here's the bottom line. The NIOSH 5 haven't changed because we haven't changed enough. And until we do, we'll keep reading the same reports that come in day and day with the same conclusions. We owe it to each other to be better than that. If you got something out of this podcast, please share it with someone in your department. Start the conversations. This is the Fire Bay Podcast. I'm Colton Young. Stay safe, stay ready.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you liked what you heard, please like, follow, and share this podcast. Do you have a topic you want us to talk about? Email us at thefirebay@gmail.com.